Thanks, guys.
Watch out, you guys. This young man is a star. You're 3 days away from making your Broadway debut, but you have quite a resume already. We're going to talk about that. I want to go all the way back to when you were 3 years old and started singing in choir. But before we do that, let's talk about A Bronx Tale a little bit.
Of course.
This is a story that's been told in one form or another for almost 30 years. Yeah. What was your first exposure to it?
My first exposure to it was the film. I think I saw it when I was 10 years old. And then as I started going through the audition process about a year ago, I started re-exploring it. And then after I actually got the job, we went and saw Chaz do it in his one-man show version in a giant banquet hall in Atlantic City. And it was pretty extraordinary that still at 65, he can just command a stage like no one else. And it's been a great process of finding how this story can hold in the idiom of musical theater.
So Chaz Palminteri wrote the story and first performed it as a one-man show on stage in 1989. And do you know the story of how Robert De Niro got involved?
Oh, yeah. He did the play, and it kind of changed his life, and every movie executive was coming to him saying, we want to buy the rights from you. And he would say, no, I want to write the screenplay and play Sonny. And they were like, you're not famous enough to do that. No one would go see the movie. And he said, well, I'm not doing it. And he said at one point they had offered him $1 million, and he still turned it down because he has this card his father wrote to him when he was a kid saying the saddest thing in life is wasted talent. And so he didn't do it. And then one day, Robert De Niro was waiting backstage for him after the show and said, I've been looking for a movie to make my directorial debut in, and I think this is an authentic story that I could understand, and you should write the screenplay, and you should play Sonny, and I'll play your father to get it produced, and let's just do this. And it changed his life, and I would say Bob said it probably changed his life as well.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's such a terrific and inspiring story, and one of my favorite things about it, and something that sets A Bronx Tale, the musical, apart from other musical adaptations of movies, is that the creative team has stayed remarkably consistent. Chaz has been involved as the writer from the original one-man show to the movie. Then he brought the show back to Broadway in 2007 and then on tour, and now he's the book writer for the musical. So his fingerprints have never been taken off of it.
Oh, never.
And since the movie was made, Robert De Niro has been involved in every incarnation as well.
And Jerry Zaks directed when the one-man show came to Broadway in 2007. Because I think a lot of people who love the movie and even the play are just like, don't screw up my favorite thing.
That's right.
And if our intention was don't screw up what already works, we have the people in place to not do that because all of them have been involved in every iteration of this story.
Well, I think one of the challenges of a project like this is that it is this sort of tough guy story. And I think people might assume that there's not a lot of crossover between the guy who likes the gangster movie and the guy who's going to musical theater. Totally. What's been your experience over the 3 weeks that you've been in previews of those intersecting audiences?
You know, I think the way in, and because it was my first question too, it's that these are people that very much have their feet on the ground. And if they break out into song, it's got to seem authentic and real and not kind of just so weirdly outward. And the way in for me was that at the end of the day, this is a fable. Even though I'm the narrator looking back as essentially if I have the soul of 65-year-old Chaz in me as I'm narrating, I'm remembering it through the eyes of a 9-year-old. And a 9-year-old is going to see a world that's a little bit heightened, is kind of soaking everything like a sponge. And therefore, the personalities and the characteristics of these people are going to be a little more over the top and viable enough to break out into song and have the heightened emotion. God knows we have the stakes necessary to raise it into the heightened state of singing. So that was my way in, and I think that's what the guys that would never set foot in a Broadway theater to see a musical can tap into.
I love looking at the actors because you see them walk out on stage and you're like, there's no way that he went to dance school. And then they start singing and dancing and everybody sounds so fantastic, but especially like Sonny's gang. They look like guys who maybe didn't have the easiest time going to drama school.
And you know, a lot of them are making their Broadway debuts, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Because they're all extraordinary and they're all incredibly unique and specific for each role. And they've delved in, and it's extraordinary.
I love what you said about having the sort of heart and soul of the 65-year-old Chaz, but telling the story of a 9-year-old. And I'm going to give you a little piece of trivia that I don't know if you knew. Your character's name is?
Kalodra.
Do you know what that name means if you look it up on like a baby name website?
No.
It means elder. So I think
Cool.
that I would ask Chaz, if he were here, I would ask him if he did that on purpose, knowing that this character had the wisdom of an old man, even though he starts off as a 9-year-old kid.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Great. That's going to inform my show tonight.
Your leading lady, Ariana DeBose, is not making her Broadway debut.
No.
She's one of my favorite actresses, and a lot of people know her from Hamilton. You guys have incredible chemistry on stage, and she's playing sort of an iconic character, Jane, the African-American girl from across the tracks who leads to a lot of the conflict in the story.
Right.
Can you talk about working with Ariana?
Oh, she's extraordinary. In the play, in 1968, when I'm stepping in as 17-year-old Kalodra, besides just narrating the show, I fall in love with a black girl in 1968, which is the year Martin Luther King was assassinated. And God knows there's going to be a lot of tension in neighborhoods that are very terrified of the other and are relying very much on tribal instincts and nuances that are very prejudiced. And but it's so, I think the key for me and Ariana was just to play our scenes like we were just falling in love, like nothing mattered. And that's going to give power when you understand the context, but I'm just talking to you like you're any girl that I'm just feeling something so overwhelming in my heart for. And it's knowing too that these are not young lovers in terms of people that don't know their bodies. Kalodra was by no means a virgin when he was 17 years old. I don't think Jane was a virgin at 16. So it's people who have confidence in who they are, but have just never felt this kind of profound feeling for another person besides just a connection physically. So that's what was wonderful to tap into. And she's so giving and loose on stage. And I feel like every time we work, I'm finding something different, and I have no idea where we're going to go. And that's when it's fun to play with someone.
Yeah, that's great. The rest of the cast is it's cohesive. But there's something special between you and the little boy Hudson, who plays the younger version of you. And we could talk about the dance moves and we could talk about sort of the big action, but what I am obsessed with is these very subtle moments that you have with him. Your posture, the way you sit down, the way that you, there's one point where you both adjust your stance just a tiny bit, and it's choreographed to the micro movement. How much time did you spend with this 9-year-old actor getting your bodies to move in the same way so you're believable as the same character throughout time?
Totally. It began with sitting in a mirror together and literally moving it all out. But I think my job is to see what he's doing and mimic him. What I've tried to do is when, like even in the lineup in the first scene when he's going down the line and not ratting on these different wise guys, I'll try to have my point of view where he's looking. So I'm not remembering, or if he's crying and his eyes are closed, I wouldn't be looking at the person he's not aware of seeing, because I, as someone looking back, would only remember what I've seen. So I think it's letting Hudson do what he does brilliantly, and then me tapping into that. But there are choreographed movements that Suture Trujillo, our wonderful choreographer, put in to show that these are the same people. We do a great thing backstage every night. He puts my hand in mine and we sync up for a minute before we go on stage. And he's a great kid.
Does it remind you of when you were little, when you were first getting your
totally.
start?
I was like, this kid is gonna take over the world.
You felt that about yourself or about?
Oh no, not about my. Not about myself, no, about Hudson.
He really is a remarkable
He's
talent.
incredible. No, at 9 years old, I did my first show when I was 8, and I played
Wizard of Oz?
Look at you.
I'm showing off
I was a flying mumpkin, a Lollipop Guild member in The Wizard of Oz. And so I was by no means having grandeurs of Broadway when I was 9 years old. But it began slowly but surely.
And you started singing even before that, right? I read that your mom put you in choir when you were 3 because you would not stop singing around the house.
Correct. How
does a 3-year-old find a choir to join?
She was just very annoyed. She was like, she thought that if she put me in a choir, I would then hate it and stop singing, and it only kind of fostered it more. She has herself to blame.
I hear a lot from actors who found theater because they hated sports, but I know that's not the case for you.
No.
You did everything. Did you ever play sports or?
Yeah, for a long time, I was a hardcore. I played baseball, which is another thing we can talk about. But my big sport was tennis, and from ages like 10 to 13, I would have a tennis lesson early in the morning, and then go to school, and then have rehearsal or voice lesson, whatever I was doing. And every weekend, I would be in some USTA youth tennis tournament. And when I was 13, my mom said, "You're going to burn out if you continue this. You can do both, but you have to choose one to focus on more." And
She was like, pick a major.
Pick a
Freshman
major.
in high school.
Tennis or musical theater.
Yeah.
Two very odd career paths to go in. And my grandparents live on Long Island, so I had grown up coming to New York and seeing Broadway shows.
Beauty and the Beast 7 times.
Look at
Still
you.
got it.
Look at you. and I'm making my debut in an Alan Menken musical.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
Isn't that crazy?
that's got to make you pinch yourself a little bit.
It's not lost to me. I will tell you that. It is not lost to me with like every day I get to do. But my way in to decide that I really wanted to do this was I saw the John Doyle directed Company on PBS, where with the actor musicians and Raul Esparza, and because for me, Beauty and the Beast epitomized like Broadway magic. Like a beast flies into the ceiling, and a second later, a human being comes out, and Be Our Guest is this show-stopping number, and then there's more in Act One. I just didn't want to leave. This was Raul Esparza was sitting with a glass of whiskey, not doing anything, and I am just as captivated. And I think, too, that's John Doyle's best utilization of actor-musicians in terms of telling a story, because Bobby does not sit down at any instrument until he's ready to actually engage with his vulnerability and this idea of, being alive and not being alone. And I watched that, and I said, if that's what doing theater and being on Broadway is, I want to do that. Because if you can have the grandeur of commercial theater, but still find something that's incredibly theatrical and nuanced, and God knows that was my introduction to Sondheim as well. I can't imagine any other life I'd want to have than this.
I feel like you might have a little director in you. I feel like you're talking like you have this vision of the stage as a whole thing, which I think a lot of actors speak very much from the perspective of an individual, like an ego. Sure. And you're talking like you see it through a...
Are you going to give me a show to direct? Or what are you going to do?
No, but I think that you have the ultimate mentor in that arena. You've got Robert De Niro directing your Broadway debut, and he has certainly done the on-screen and behind-the-camera thing.
You know what? I'll take it. I've never thought that way, because God knows I've worked for this year and a half since college to become an actor, but who knows? Who knows what'll come on? I watched your interview with Lonnie Price, actually, and I think he was saying the same thing, that he said if he could look back when he was doing Merrily and think that he'd end up now as a director of a documentary, he'd say never. But who knows where your life's going to go.
Yeah, somebody's got to put the idea in your head and see where it takes you. Can we talk about the fact that you once won a contest called Bay Area Teen Idol?
Oh, my God.
That does not surprise me at all, because you're super charming and adorable and have tons of talent. What was that about? Was it like American Idol, but just in California?
There's the Venetian Room in the Fairmont, San Francisco.
Yeah, it's like one of the fanciest cabaret spaces.
Yeah, it's where Tony Bennett debuted I Left My Heart in San Francisco. Frank Sinatra would play there all the time. It was this extraordinary room that they revitalized maybe 5-10 years ago, and they had a competition for high schoolers called Bay Area Teen Idol, where you'd come up and sing one song in front of a panel of judges, and the winner got to sing one song to open for one of the headliners in the season, and that year it was Laura Benanti. And so I won, and then the woman who runs it and I got to know each other, and she saw I was going to Michigan and was actually pursuing this, and she said, why don't you do a 6-song half-hour set? And so I got to open for Laura Benanti, and it was extraordinary, and that actually led to my first agent, and that kind of spiraled. So I actually owe very much where I am today to that competition.
Yeah, congratulations. Have you seen Laura Benanti since you got to New York? Like, have you told her this story?
I would bet she probably wouldn't even remember, and I don't blame her, because she's doing a trillion things.
I bet she'd love hearing the story, though. Speaking of Michigan, since you brought it up, I'm sorry about this weekend. But it made me think about Calogero's moment where the Yankees break his heart.
That's right.
And I thought, there's everything sort of works its way in. And
everything connects. Well, that shows how enigmatic Sonny is, that within one conversation he had with him, he lost all allegiance to the Yankees. This idea that, why do you care so much about someone that has no effect on your life? The line in the show is he's crying because the Yankees lost in the 1960 World Series when Bill Mazeroski hit this home run. And he said, Mickey Mantle was crying and he feels so depressed, I'm so sad for him. And Sonny's like, why? If your father can't pay the rent, would you go to Mickey Mantle and would he give you money? No, nobody cares. So why should you care?
And suddenly this
And
little
suddenly,
boy.
and it's instantly he's like, you're totally right. And he follows, and that begins that relationship. So yeah, I have to find my move to have removal from Michigan, but I don't think I'll ever find that removal.
So you mentioned that your grandparents lived on Long Island when you were growing up. Have you spent any time in the Bronx, either then or now, to get to know the neighborhood? And does the Bronx of A Bronx Tale still exist at all?
That's very interesting. I had never been to the Bronx before this process, but when I got the job, 3 days later, I got a call from Chaz, who I had never talked to before except in the audition process, saying, I'm taking you to the Bronx.
Oh, yeah?
We spent a whole day together, and I've gone up multiple times. We actually went
Where did he
yesterday.
take you?
We went to his stew on 187th in Belmont. There's construction's been done, so it's a little lower than it was back in 1960s. But there's a lot of staple stores that are still there, like Mike's Deli and Jerome's Pastry Shop. But it's also changed a lot. It's much more eclectic and diverse. In 1960s, it was very just sparse with Italian Americans and immigrants, but it's also become a little gentrified. There's a lot of commercialism.
Is there a Starbucks there yet?
I didn't see a Starbucks, funnily enough, but I think I saw like a Pinkberry. That was when I was like, oh, geez.
That's a sign.
We've
yeah.
ruined the Bronx.
But the actual stoop where Chaz grew up is still there. Does it have like a rope across it or a plaque? Like I know if you go visit the house where Carrie Bradshaw lived in the West Village, there's a big rope that's like no photos. Don't cross this rope. Yeah.
No, Chaz is too cool for that.
Yeah.
Because he was like, sit down. And he said, if you sit down here and this is the view of where I saw this shooting, that's the corner where I saw Sonny hang out. Sonny is essentially an amalgamation of three guys. He also, first of all, wouldn't tell me the real name of Sonny. Sonny is not the real name.
He still won't rat on him to this day. Wow.
You don't, if Catholic Italians in 1960s would not rat. You're bred in that. But no, it gives us just, it's more tools in the toolbox. It's beyond just like sense memory. It's just that I have a tangible understanding of what I'm talking about every night, so that I don't need to envision Ann Arbor or San Francisco, where I'm from. I can actually think about this town and embody step into someone else's shoes and embody a different human being than myself.
Yeah, there definitely is a feeling of the neighborhood as a character in the show. And there are other shows that have that, like In the Heights, I think, is the quintessential one. But, this
Fiddler
show,
on the Roof. Or?
Yeah, of course. Certainly, the town has its own existence as a member of the family almost. I love that this show feels like it's both brand new and has this sort of homage to shows like In the Heights and Jersey Boys, and certainly there's a West Side Story element to it that really makes me think, of course it had to be a Broadway musical, which I am so happy to walk out of that theater with that feeling, because going in, it's like, I wonder if this is going to work, and coming out, it's, wow, this really worked.
You're totally right, and I think that's a testament to our creative team that have a profound respect for what this art form is and the structure that Rodgers and Hammerstein set in place to say this is what a book musical is supposed to do, and it's been proven. And God knows we are putting our own take on it, but we have a great respect for what works and what's been proven to work. Chaz's two favorite musicals growing up were Guys and Dolls and West Side Story. And
there's like a great scene with the dice, the crap game.
The new Luck Be a Lady.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, which definitely brought some. I'm glad to know that was one of Chaz's favorite musicals, because I could feel that he was giving some love back to
100%
to that show. What are you most looking forward to about opening night? Is it as simple as not having to go to rehearsal on your day off anymore?
That's definitely one of them. I'm looking forward to sharing it with my family and some great friends. My grandparents are coming. My mom and my sister are coming, and it's just people that extended so much love and support when I chose to go down a path that there's absolutely no guarantee. You could do everything correct in your control, and there is still no guarantee you will get something, because there's so much that is out of your control. And the fact that all I ever heard, as long as I was working hard and not being complacent, all I ever heard from my mom was just, yes, what do you need? How can I help while still letting you do your own thing and you have to put in the work? But the fact that it actually worked out and that these, 8 sort of extraordinary people on this creative team said yes to me, and that I get to tangibly live my dream every day, that is not lost to me.
Yeah. Oh, that's so fantastic. Well, I'm really excited. I am thrilled to have gotten to see the show in previews. I will definitely be back to see it again. We have time for a few questions from the audience.
Yeah.
Hey, so I was wondering did you get to see or were you involved in the version in Paper Mill Playhouse when they had it last year, I think?
Yeah, no. I was, it's funny, I auditioned for the Paper Mill process and I got very far, and then I didn't get it. And I was having a really hard time having removal from it. Because I think our job as actors is to fall in and out of love on a daily basis when we get material. And sometimes certain shows are harder to delve into, and sometimes it's immediate. And I read the script and I was like, I need to do this. And when I didn't get it, I was just I would be overly frustrated and angry. And I had a roommate I was living with at the time who was a great friend who said, why don't you just work on it for yourself? You have all the material, you know what they want, engage, instead of, laying back and feeling frustrated. And that was back in November of 2015, and a couple times a month from November to, say, May or June of this year, I would just rework on the material. And then one day I get a call from my agent saying, we're reopening up Colodro and we want to see you again. And all of a sudden it's like, well, the show hasn't left me. If anything, I feel more secure in the character. I feel an ability to be more malleable in whatever direction they need me to go. I know where this character lives in my body and my soul. And that's an openness. They could have just said, oh, we don't want Bobby. We know it didn't work the last time. So that took an openness of them to see how 6 months of life has changed them, has changed me. They have a clearer vision for the show to see if this collaboration has any merit. And it's extraordinary. What I've learned is not to belittle my work ethic. What I can acknowledge is the absurdity of the fact that this entity, this show, fell in with my trajectory in life at this time. That's luck. The fact that there was a role where they needed an Italian who could play 17, who could sing doo-wop music, and didn't have to be famous to lead their show, that's luck. I had to take it and work hard for it. They're not going to give it to me. But the fact that that even exists in the universe is crazy. And so if you can acknowledge that and then move forward, I feel very fortunate that it worked out.
That is so impressive that you were like, all right, they said no to me, but on the off chance that they're going to ask me again.
Honestly, not even. It was that I couldn't find distance and removal from it to move on. So it wasn't thinking maybe there will be another production down the line. No. Honestly,
you just thought, I know that I have a piece of myself to find in this material, and I'm going to keep digging even if no one ever sees it.
Totally.
I'm obsessed with that. Who else has a question?
Hi, how are you?
Great, how are you doing?
Good. I was wondering, is there any dream roles in any shows that you'd want to play on Broadway? Whether it's actually on Broadway or not. Doesn't
Definitely matter. Bobby and Company. Not just because my name's Bobby, but because that's the show that changed my life in many ways.
Do you know that they're doing a production in London where the lead character in Company is going to be a woman? I just read about it today. Really? That was just a sidebar. Little Broadway nerd sidebar.
I cannot wait.
I know.
That's going to be super cool.
But by the time you turn 35, it'll be time for another Broadway revival of Company.
That's what I'm thinking. What's been a great gift of this show is that I've gotten to originate a role on Broadway at 24. That was always my dream, is I just wanted to engage with new material. And it's, God knows it's been such a blast, so it's continuing that to say, I want to introduce a new role. Like, I get to introduce, this is a dream role, and I get to introduce it. That's crazy to me. But God knows Bobby and Company, like Billy Bigelow and Carousel would be great. My hero is Anthony Warlow and Steve Pasquale and those kinds of voices. I don't know how you couldn't fall in love with those guys. So, along that kind of realm.
Do we have another question?
Hi.
Hi.
I wanted to ask you, what is your favorite scene from the Bronx Tale movie?
The movie?
Yeah.
You know what's in the movie that we don't have in the show is the scene where they go to the boxing match, where Calogero and his father are sitting up in the bleachers, and Sonny's down in ringside, and he brings a wise guy up to say, hey, you can come down. And his father said, no, we're fine here. And Calogero turns is like, why? Well, why can't we just go there? He's offering seats. And his father says, well, no, I paid for these seats. How did it makes me feel that you're not grateful for the fact that I put in money and we're trying to have a moment together and you want to just go be with him? It's like fine, go with him. You don't want to be with me, fine. And it's just heartbreaking. And that's been a real wonderful process in this show, is to find that balance and relationship between a highly charismatic father figure and a father who may not be the most exciting person in terms of what he does and how he lives life, but is just trying to instill values of don't waste your life, make the right decisions, lead by love and unconditional love and respect towards people you don't know. That's a scene I miss most from the movie.
We are out of time, unfortunately, but I want to thank you so much for being here, to encourage everyone to go see A Bronx Tale, the musical. I think that you are the perfect actor to play this role. You have a wisdom beyond your years, just like Calogero does. And I'm going to take the hand signal that Sonny always does and turn it around and say, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.